Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Joy and this is a mummy channel. I've got two identical twin boys and I usually vlog or just sort of talk about mummy related content. So welcome to my bedroom. We're pretty chilled on this channel. So today I wanted to talk about breastfeeding and pumping and formula and basically everything related to feeding your baby within the first 6 months or up to a year while they require milk of some sorts. So basically one of my mummy friends on Instagram, and everyone that I follow and tag was on Instagram, I'm just going to call them my mummy friends because that's what I feel like. We're just kind of one really cool community over there. So if you don't follow me, I'll leave the link here and you should join us. So she asked, she's got twins as well, and she was wondering if I exclusively breastfeed the boys or if I'm still doing it, or what happened to formula. And she said that she's having a really hard time to keep up with them and she's incredibly exhausted. So basically I was starting to answer her and I had this like really long text, and then you know how Instagram direct message cuts you off. So I had like 5 of these texts and I was getting really confusing, and I was like, I've got so much to say, I'm just going to make a video because I feel like this is probably going to be quite interesting for lots of mummies out there. So this is for you, here we go. So my breastfeeding journey, if you don't know, the boys were 3 months early. They were born at 28 weeks and thus not able to breastfeed. The reflex, the sucking reflex, doesn't develop until 32 weeks, and then it sort of depends on how well your premature baby is. So my milk, I expressed colostrum before the boys were even born, so that was really good, just in like a little syringe. And then my milk came in pretty quickly, and basically for the entire first, I'd say 8 to 10 weeks. I think I started with Jackson when he was 35 weeks, so that would have been like 7 weeks, and with Byron I started a lot later. So let's say for at least 2 months I was exclusively pumping. So my milk came in pretty quickly. I knew from my mother and my grandmother that we tend to have quite a lot of milk as women in our family, so I was quite aware of that. And of course I think on like day 3 or 4 or something, my breasts were completely engorged. So Nico tells you to pump every 3 hours to get into the rhythm of what your baby would usually be doing if it was a full-term baby and was able to breastfeed, and just so that by the time you actually get to breastfeed your baby, you've got enough milk. So that's what I was doing. I had a hospital grade pump while I was still in hospital, and then I decided to rent a hospital grade pump for at home. I'll leave a vlog down below where I show that while I was in Nico and showed you the pump and what I'm doing and everything. So I had like a little booklet writing down how much I was pumping every day, and then the boys were on 1 ml of breast milk every 3 hours to start with. Sorry, every 2 hours to start with. But Jackson wasn't even, because he was so sick, he wasn't even on any milk I think until like day 10 or something. So obviously I had lots and lots of milk, as you would if it was a normal baby, and that was all put into the freezer. If you don't know our story, I'll leave a couple of links down below. I've got a blog post about it and a couple of videos, so you can catch up on that if you're interested. But anyway, so I was exclusively pumping and everything was going into the freezer, pretty much everything. So day 3 or 4, whatever, my breasts were completely engorged. It was hurting like crazy, and my mum had that when I was born as well, and she ended up on antibiotics, and it was really really bad, and it was so bad that she actually had to stop breastfeeding because her milk was basically completely green and would have been really bad for me. So I was very aware of that, so straight away I went to the lactation consultant, and they kind of gave me the general tips: put some like cabbage on it, and run warm water, have a hot shower, and try to get it out. But there was just nothing coming out. My breasts were huge and there was nothing coming out. So I was very lucky that I then saw a really good lactation consultant, and I'm thinking I should really do a video about it because it was completely different than any of the tips you'll find out there, and it really really helped me to get rid of my mastitis. But if I would do a video about it, it'd be quite visual because it's got a couple of massaging techniques, and you need a second person I don't know, I'm still thinking about it, but I know it'd be so helpful. So basically my husband and I did that every night, like massaging my breasts, and there's like specific pumping techniques and everything to get rid of the mastitis. So in the course of those 2 months, I had mastitis 3 times, but luckily because we knew what we were doing, I didn't have to go into antibiotics. I could keep pumping, and that ended up pumping only 3 or 4 times a day instead of, I think, like 7 or 8 times a day, because otherwise if I pumped more, I had so much milk that would get mastitis straight away. So basically I had an overproduction, which no one really believed me at the beginning because it's not that common. So it was quite a lot of back and forth with lactation consultants to tell them, look, I have so much milk, I need to deal with that side, so I don't get sick, rather than I don't have enough milk. Right, so then when Jackson was around 36 weeks, I started breastfeeding. Breastfeeding a premature baby is like, you hold them on there while you feed them with the NG tube that goes down their nose, and they basically fall asleep, but it's just so they can smell the milk and they slowly start to get used to it. So it's not like a normal full-term baby. It's a really long process for them to understand what they need to do. And then they're too tired and they're not strong enough to get enough milk, so you still have to like feed them via their tube, but sort of slowly start breastfeeding. Jackson has always been a quite hungry baby, luckily, and he's always been quite good with his milk in general. So when we got him home, which was at 37 weeks, yes, 37 weeks, I was able to exclusively breastfeed him, which was amazing, and he had really picked it up by then. He was still sleeping quite a lot. I mean, he wasn't even full term yet, but he was definitely getting enough just from breastfeeding to gain weight. And I'll link our discharge video where we stayed a week in hospital before Jackson got discharged, because I talk about his weight gain and everything in that video as well. So it's also recommended to demand feed premature babies, just because they often are too sleepy and not strong enough to really get enough milk in like a 3-hourly rhythm as you would maybe do with a normal baby. Not a normal baby, a term baby. So I was demand breastfeeding Jackson for a good 3 weeks before we started to introduce a bottle, because if you introduce a bottle too late, then they might not take the bottle. And seriously, if you've got twins, they need to take the bottle, otherwise you'll never get a break. So that's my story with that. Byron was still in hospital. He had always lots of problems with keeping his milk down, was having enough milk, was gaining weight, the whole thing. Like basically feeding has always been a huge problem for him. So when we finally got him out of special care baby unit, so he went from newborn intensive care unit to special care baby unit to a children's hospital. So when we got to the children's hospital, he lost his tube, and I started demand feeding him as I was doing with Jackson. But he's always had really big problems with breastfeeding. He doesn't really like eating, so he's never really eaten enough. And he had such big oxygen problems. He was on oxygen until like a month and a half ago, so not long ago. He came home on oxygen, which made him a lot more tired, and just the sucking and everything was just really difficult for him. Plus he had the prongs up in his nose, so he couldn't open his mouth wide enough. So that was a completely different story. But to get back to my supply and everything, I then realized that I didn't have enough milk, because in order to prevent the mastitis, I was only, like I said, pumping 3 to 4 times a day, but I only made around 1 liter of milk, which quite quickly became not enough for both boys. So I started pumping and breastfeeding like 24/7. I mean, we were pretty much at home all the time anyway, but I pumped at least 4 times a day and breastfed exclusively. Until we realized that Byron really wasn't gaining enough weight. So then we started bottle feeding with express breast milk and breastfeeding, but sort of kept Jackson as much on the breast as possible in order to increase my supply. So that went on until the boys were about 3 months old, 3 months corrected. They would have been around 6 months actual, so around end of March. And then we realized it just wasn't enough. I think one of the biggest factors was sleep deprivation. They really didn't sleep a lot. So I didn't sleep a lot. It's really tough with two. Obviously you've got two, although I've got a lot of help and had a lot of help at that stage too. It's just, you don't have the time to sit down, you don't have the time to nap. So I definitely wasn't taking as good of care as I should have, or not even, just wasn't able, because there was just not enough time in the day to sit down or actually eat enough or anything like that. So that definitely took a toll on my body and thus my breast milk. And even when I tried to take it really easy and just like let the place go and, you know, not shower, whatever, it just wasn't. It's so much to do with twins. You just don't have the time to just sit down. So I think that was a major factor in my supply. I think it would have been different if I could have breastfed them both, but Byron was continuously getting worse, so we had to think about supplementing just for his weight gain. So they wanted to put him back onto things that he got in a NICU. There's things like Fortifier and something else that like keeps it more in his tummy and a whole area of stuff. But instead of that, the dietitian decided to supplement my breast milk with formula and exclusively bottle feed him. So we got formula, and I'll actually quickly go and grab it and show you. So we got a prescription for this formula. It's called S26 Gold Prem Grow. So it's for premature babies, and you have to get a prescription from it. So we get it from the pharmacy. You cannot buy it in stores. Also, if you don't know, I live in New Zealand, so this is obviously New Zealand related, but really it's not that interesting that I'm telling you this, because this is going to be discontinued. So we are having kind of like the last batches of it. But I think this was really good. The boys have never had anything else but this, so we haven't ever tried any store-bought formula. It really helped Byron to gain weight. So to get back to my mummy's friend Christian, I was exclusively breastfeeding and pumping until they were 3 months old. But it was really hard work. Like I said, I tried to keep Jackson as much on the breast as possible. Ran out of all of our frozen supply, so I literally couldn't be away from the boys at all, unless we had some sort of, you know, milk in the fridge. And Byron it was getting worse and worse with breastfeeding him, so there always had to be enough in the fridge pumped for him to be in bottle fed. So I was getting incredibly stressed. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't, like, not even with the boys, I couldn't go anywhere because I always had to have a pump on me, because we got to a stage where I could only pump like 50 ml. So I literally pumped every hour to even get something for Byron. And I felt so bad because I was constantly worried that I wasn't going to be able to feed my boys. And like, what do you do with two hungry babies, you know? So that was getting crazy. So that kind of all overlapped with the dietitian saying, look, we need to do something for his weight gain, because otherwise his lungs won't heal. He needs to gain weight. Let's supplement the breast milk with formula. So we had the formula at home anyway, and at one night I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired. At that stage I was pumping like 20 ml at a time. I was like, we're giving formula tonight. I need, like, if I don't sleep for 4 hours, I won't have any milk at all anyway. So we're giving formula, I'm gonna go sleep, and then we'll go from there. So from that stage on, we supplemented with formula, which made my life so much better. But at the same time, it probably didn't really help with increasing my milk. So since then, we've, like, it slowly kind of got less and less and less. And at some stage, it was also just easier to just bottle feed both boys at the same time. Especially when I'm on my own. I had like Jackson on the breast, bottle feeding Byron, and we had sort of made a plan with the nurses and the dietitian saying we're only going to bottle feed Byron, and like kept a record of the bottles, because with the breast we didn't know how much he was getting. So I was telling my body, you only need to feed one baby. So the formula got more and more and more. So basically from about 4 months on up until now, we use around 3 to 5 bottles a day of formula. Sometimes it's only 2 or 3. Definitely always at night. Sometimes it's 5, depending on how much sleep I'm getting, how much time I've got to pump. Currently, I still breastfeed both boys during the night, because they still don't sleep through. They're 9 months now and just over 6 months corrected. So I breastfeed both during the night and the first feeds in the morning. For some reason they're amazing on the breast during the night. I still haven't figured that out, even Baroness, but during the day they're both pretty much rejecting it now. Sometimes after their nap they'll breastfeed, but not a lot. So I pump around 3 times a day, morning, night, and 1 or twice during the day depending on how much time I get, and then the rest is supplemented with formula. It's not, I feel like it's not ideal. I'd like for them to just be on breast milk, but that's the best that we can do. So if I tell people we do express breast milk, we do breastfeeding, and we do formula, they're like, what? This is all over the place. But for us, this is what's working, and that's kind of what's best for us. And I do not want to give up expressing or breastfeeding, and I'll just do whatever I can and how much milk I'm getting. So yeah, that is what we're doing at the moment. So really, in a nutshell, that's my breastfeeding story. I did a pump review with Medela. I'll leave that down below. I'm currently still on the hospital grade pump because that's kind of the only thing that will get my milk out. So it's quite interesting for me how I went from a massive oversupply to basically an undersupply. So I think it really is so important. It's incredibly difficult if you've got a premature baby, because like I said, I couldn't have pumped more, or I would have been in seriously danger of getting the same thing as my mum did and not being able to breastfeed at all. So I feel like what we did is really just what worked best for us and what needed to be done. But ideally, it's obviously amazing if you've got a full-term baby and can just tell your body through your baby what you need and what you don't need, and how much milk you need to make. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think especially for parents of premature babies, there's so much going on. And oh, something really interesting that I learned in one of the lactation courses is that breast milk is produced through oxytocin, which I think is the happy hormone. So if you think about your babies while your baby's in NICU, if your partner snuggles up to you, anything like that was touch related that makes you happy, that yeah, I think it's like the love hormone, will increase your supply. So that's definitely a good tip for having to pump while your baby's in NICU. But in general, it is so hard. There's so much going on with your baby. You're really worried about your baby, especially like even still when they're coming home with being on oxygen and everything, and it's not as straightforward. So whatever works for you. I mean, New Zealand is quite good with now they're saying, you know, fed is best, and I feel like that is definitely the go-to here. So whatever works for you, and even if it's such a crazy mix as we're doing, you know, whatever you feel like you need to be doing and what you can do, what is in your capacity, just do that and don't feel bad about it. There's lots of different formulas on the market. We just happen to be using the Preemie one, which works really well for us. Now that the boys are getting older, I will be looking into a couple of other things, but I'll let you know if I do. Yeah, and also for mums of twins, it is crazy busy, and I think it is quite a high possibility that you might not have enough sleep or time for your body to produce enough milk, or that, like my mummy friend, you just get run down after 3 months because there's so much going on and it's so busy. Or if I was on my own and I was feeding one and the other one was crying, my milk would just stop because my body was going into, oh, you need to help your baby, but you can't, you know, like you need to help rather than feed your baby. So there's lots of things going on that that only really twin mummies can understand, I think. So don't feel pressured by anyone. I was so lucky that both my husband and all of our parents were so supportive. They always said, you know, whatever you need. And especially at the beginning when I was very set on wanting to demand feed both boys, I was literally just sitting in bed all day and mum was handing me babies. Like, but that only worked for a couple of days, and then I was like, this is not working. So I think if you do have the support and if you've got the time, try out a couple of things, see what works for you. But definitely, you know, if you're run down, you won't be able to help your baby. So yeah, that is my breastfeeding journey. Oh, and obviously now we've started solids with the boys when they're around 7 months actual, so 4 months corrected. So solids are in the mix too, but obviously they're still mainly on milk. So at the moment they're mainly on bottles during the day, and then I'll breastfeed at night, or maybe like once during the day. So I really don't breastfeed a lot anymore, but I do want to keep it going as much as I can, like I said, and I do want to keep expressing milk hopefully until they're around 2. So yeah, that's kind of the plan for now. If you've got any questions whatsoever, please leave them down below. Send me an email, join our Little Mummy community on Instagram, and you can direct message me there and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.